Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to my podcast. Today we are talking about AI and the future of jobs. And my guest today is Chris Hyams, who is the CEO of Indeed, the worldwide employment website with a mission to help people get jobs. Welcome, Chris.
Bernard, thank you so much for having me.
Where are you joining us from today, Chris?
I am in Austin, Texas, where I am based. I've been here for the last 24 years. I'm Indeed's new headquarters office in downtown Austin that we just moved into.
Nice. So maybe you can take us through a brief overview of your journey and how you ended up
Mm.
as CEO at Indeed.
It's funny. I used to say that my path was unconventional, but the more people I talk to, it turns out there really isn't a whole conventional path here. But I did not start out in technology. My undergraduate degree is a liberal arts degree in architecture. I was interested in designing homes, found out early on I had no talent, and ended up, when I got out of school, I spent the first few years focused on wanting to help people. My first job out of school was in the addiction recovery field, working with young adolescent alcoholics and addicts. I moved to a small town in rural Vermont and taught public education, public school special education, and then followed my wife to Los Angeles, where she went to graduate school. And I played music professionally for 2 years, tried to become a rock star, did not, but would do it all over again. And then followed my wife again. She got a job at Rice University in Houston, Texas in 1993, and I could take undergraduate classes for free as the spouse of a staff member, and decided to try this computer science thing. And this was before the field as we know it really erupted. But I just fell in love with computer science. Thought I was going to get a PhD, but ended up getting a job out of graduate school. I got a master's in CS in 1996, right as the World Wide Web was just taking off. So I spent 9 years at one company as a software engineer, and then I ran the engineering division. I started my own company and technology startup, did that for 6 years, and then was really fortunate in 2010. Indeed was a small but really amazing company looking for a head of the product organization. So I joined in 2010. We were 130 people. We're 13,000 today. And I've just had this incredible fortune to fall in love with this amazing business, with this incredible mission to help people get jobs. Ran the technology division for a number of years. And when our previous CEO, Hisayuki Idekoba, known to everyone here as Deco, became the CEO of our parent company, Recruit, I had the opportunity to step in this role. And so for me, it's just been an extraordinary journey of being here, falling in love with this business, and being able really to grow up with it. And I have what I think is the best job in the world, helping people get jobs everywhere.
What a fantastic story. And yeah, what a great background. It's really inspirational. Lovely. So we're talking about jobs here today, and you're obviously helping people to get jobs. But how is the global job market at the moment?
So globally, right now, across the board, basically speaking, we are still elevated in terms of the number of jobs available around the world compared to pre-pandemic. So we compare most everything to a baseline of February of 2020. But the labor market is cooling pretty much everywhere. In the US, we have still very low unemployment at about 3.8%, 180,000 jobs added in August. But as I said, job postings are up compared to pre-pandemic, about 26.5%. But year over year, they're down 15%. So we saw massive growth, like the rest of the world, in through 2021, and that has cooled down. One really interesting thing we're seeing in the U.S. right now, and we have a team of economists, the hiring lab, that publishes a bunch of really interesting up to the minute labor data. One of the interesting things we're reporting on now is that job postings are declining faster in areas that see more remote work. So those were the areas where we saw the biggest boom during the pandemic. If you look at the metros, the biggest ones, the Bay Area, Seattle, and Austin, those have a huge percentage of their jobs that are available for remote work. They saw the biggest job growth during the pandemic. They are now seeing the largest slowing. So nationwide, jobs are down 16% year over year. In those high remote work metro areas, it's about down about 40%. California, one example that we call out here is in Bakersfield, only about 30% of the jobs could be done remotely. Job postings are only down 5% year over year compared to San Jose, where they're down 50%, and about half the jobs in San Jose can be done remotely. Um,
Interesting. Do you see this as the reason for this is that companies are pulling back remote workers into their offices, or is there any other reason for that?
So it's interesting. It's not really that. It's that the sectors that can be done remotely were the ones that were the most elevated, and those are the ones that happen to be coming down. So when we look, there's actually not a decrease in the percentage of jobs on Indeed that advertise remote work. It's just that the sectors of, for example, tech and finance, those are the ones that have slowed down the most because those were the hottest, and I think we're just coming back to something more like normal. We also did see during the pandemic, though, that the metros that have the highest amount of remote work, there's a spillover effect. So when people used to be coming to downtown San Francisco every single day, and then they stopped coming in, that impacted retail and all of the other sectors around them. So those metros definitely have seen the most disruption.
And how do you see AI affecting the future of work?
Mm. Yeah, so that is obviously the biggest question on everyone's minds today, and frankly, it's a very old question of whether technology will help or hurt jobs. That question goes back a couple of hundred years to when the Luddites first smashed looms in the UK because they thought that those jobs were going away. Our perspective is that over the long run, we think the technology has led to an improvement in our life. We work fewer hours in safer conditions and generally enjoy a higher quality of life than ever before. But these technology disruptions do mean the real loss of jobs of people as they're taking hold, and these waves of innovation are happening faster and faster. So AI is clearly going to have a very significant impact, and we can get into the details of how we look at that. But I think from my perspective, the headline would be that I think AI, in terms of how it is going to change the world of work, is bigger than the internet. If you think about it, almost every single job is different today because of the existence of the internet. The fact you as a journalist, we're having this conversation and we're sitting in different cities, and you're going to send this out to a million people who are going to be able to see it on their own. That's very different than how you would have done your job 30 years ago today. But you're still doing your job. You're just doing it in a very different way. So we think that AI is going to transform almost every job, how they're done. Not necessarily eliminate those jobs, but they will transform. And we've done some research on this that we can talk about that maybe gives us a little bit of clues.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that a bit more. And I completely agree. I believe that AI will augment every single job on the planet, and it is likely to make some jobs redundant, but it will also add new jobs. But so specifically, how does it affect jobs and the skills that people will need to perform them?
Yeah, so I mentioned we have a team of economists called the Hiring Lab, and they publish on a regular basis everything that we're seeing in the labor market, and then also occasionally do very deep dives. And so they spent the last couple of months looking at AI. We just published the first part of a series that we'll be publishing over the next couple of months, and it's the AI at Work report. And so the first thing we did was looking at the AI is a very large field. Generative AI is now on the top of mind for everyone. So systems like ChatGPT and Bard and things like that. So what our Hiring Lab team did is they looked at about 55 million job postings over the last year, and broke that down into 2,600 distinct skills, and then looked at for each one of those skills, how effective is a generative AI system like ChatGPT at performing that job, to sort of look at sector by sector, what is the potential impact, and then we ranked those. So the first headline is that nearly every job will have some kind of impact. There are aspects of that job that can be done well by generative AI, but there's a big difference. So about 20% of the jobs that we analyzed, we believe will be highly exposed to generative AI. That means more than 80% of the skills required are things that generative AI can do well or very well. 80% of those of the jobs will have low or moderate exposure, but the sort of moderate still means generative AI could do somewhere around 35 to 50% of that job. So those will change as well. When we look at the difference, the most interesting thing is that for years and years and years, we've been talking about the impact of automation on jobs. And most of the narrative has been, how is automation going to impact mostly lower paid and more manual and physical jobs, things like warehousing and driving. Generative AI is not very good at those, but it's more what we would think of as sort of knowledge work that is going to be highly impacted. So the number one most exposed job is software development. For years and years, we thought software developers are the ones that are certainly the most in demand set of skills. And not to say that those jobs are going away, but what we found is that about 95% of the skills required in software development is something that generative AI is good or very good at. So the job of software developers is certainly going to evolve and change very, very much. IT operations and help desk, legal, HR, those things are all highly exposed to potential impact. The ones that are at the bottom of the list that we see, things like driving, beauty and wellness, childcare, things that require a very large amount of in-person or physical work. The other thing that is interesting, just going back to the previous conversation, is that there's a very, very high overlap between jobs that can be done remotely and jobs where more and more of those skills can be done very well by generative AI. And if you think about it, if we're having this conversation here, we don't have to be in the same room, we're not lifting 50 pounds. That actually means that these types of jobs that we have that can be done remotely will be more impacted. It means they're going to evolve more, they're going to change more over time.
Interesting. And yeah, I completely agree. I've literally just finished writing a chapter for my new book, which is on generative AI, on the impact of jobs, and everything you've just said, I can echo. And it's interesting that jobs like plumbers, for example, are pretty safe, and because they are physical jobs, they are completely different. People walking into someone's house trying to figure out how to replumb their house. This is something that AI won't be able to do for a long time. But then lots of jobs like call center work and programming and so on, AI has become really good at this. Do you?
Now, for clarity, though, it's not zero, right? So plumbing, if you've seen the latest release from ChatGPT, which is integrating image recognition, so a plumber very soon will be able to go in and put their phone in front of a pipe and have the AI tell them exactly what they need and what the fix is. They'll probably become much more effective at their job, but it'll be very hard to replace them because someone still does need to come in and do that work.
I couldn't agree more, yes. So do you think we are ready as a society to deal with this? Because I have real concerns about all of this, about how we reskill people, how we get ready, how we transition the many people that will see their skills become redundant to some extent. How do we retrain to then work effectively in this new age of AI?
Yeah, this is a primary concern for us at Indeed. So, as you said in the intro, our mission is to help people get jobs. And we think about the mismatch between what work is available and what people are looking for. And we recognize our role in trying to create a more efficient global work marketplace. So, when we think about this, there's a couple of key factors. One is being able to recognize these shifts as they happen as quickly as possible. Sometimes, it's too late. People who worked, for example, as a travel agent 20 or 30 years ago, when Expedia and other tools like that came, many of them got caught and didn't realize how quick these things were happening. So our hiring lab, the reason that they can do the work that they do is Indeed sits at the center of really the global economy. There's 350 million job seekers that come to Indeed every single month. There's 30 million jobs, 3.5 million employers. We see these connections in real time. We see new skills as jobs are getting posted that start to grow. We see old skills that start going away. So for example, job postings that include the terms around generative AI are up 160% this year alone. So we see these things in real time as they're happening. So we can start to identify where these gaps are. And then the second thing that we need to do is we're really focused on how we can use AI ourselves to make matching more efficient. How do we make hiring simpler and faster? Because what becomes really important is, as this disruption happens, how can we identify transferable skills? And there are always a set of things that people have in one field that can be applied somewhere else. They just don't necessarily know what those jobs are, what they are. We have this incredible view of these tens of thousands of skills and these millions of jobs. And so our belief is, yes, I think it's a very challenging problem, but we are well suited to help through improvements in matching, to help identify these challenges and help get people placed as quickly as possible when there is disruption.
So you mentioned that you're using AI in your own organization. So how do you see AI affecting how we hire people over the next few years?
Yeah. Our theme when we talk about it is that our vision is to make hiring simpler, faster, and more human. And that's compared to how it typically is, which is complex, slow, and unfortunately largely impersonal. And when you look at it, there are numerous steps in how hiring is done, of writing job descriptions and sifting through hundreds or thousands of resumes and scheduling interviews. The vast majority of that effort comes before the essential piece of two people talking together to see, is there a fit here? Is there an opportunity? Now, the interesting thing is, I in that report that I mentioned, HR is one of those fields where more than 80% of the tasks are things that generative AI can do. Those are actually all of the slow and complex and painful parts. So conveniently, the things around how we write job descriptions, how we sift through resumes, how we schedule interviews, we're focused on automating those administrative and repetitive tasks to make the job more human. So someone who is doing hiring can spend more time talking to another person, make that happen much more quickly. So one example of something we've done recently, writing a job description on average takes about 2 hours. And I've never met a talent professional who says they like writing job descriptions, or who even believes that they're writing ones that are useful at attracting the right candidates. So we've spent the last couple of years taking the hundreds of millions of jobs that we see and the billions of interactions between job seekers and jobs, and building a system that when an employer can come in and say, here's the job title and here's the location, we then will prompt them with a very large set of curated specific skills or certifications that are required. They can just select the ones that they want. And then we will use generative AI to generate a job description, but not just a random. I mean, you could go to ChatGPT and say, give me a job description for a plumber, but we're going to feed in the right set of structured data, and then we generate multiple different versions of it, and we use our matching AI to predict which of those ones that are generated are the best ones. And so in about 5 minutes, we can get a job description that right now we've had about 800,000 employers in the testing phase use this to generate job descriptions. Those job descriptions are 16% more likely to attract a job seeker, as opposed to spending 2 hours and doing it manually. So that's something that we can do that then takes the pain out of the process to make it simpler and faster. Now, I do want to be clear. And this is something that we talk about a lot. I'm incredibly excited about AI and some of the advances. I'm also deeply concerned in the employment field, but everywhere that the biggest challenge with AI is bias. And so AI is built from
Mm.
data. Data comes from humans, and humans are unfortunately far from perfect in many ways. And bias and barriers exist certainly in hiring. There's a famous study that probably most people have heard of where researchers sent 5,000 resumes out to about 1,300 different job ads. The only thing they changed in the resumes were the names. They used two white sounding names, Emily and Greg, two black sounding names, Lakeisha and Jamal. And depressingly, but not surprisingly, Lakeisha and Jamal had to send out 50% more resumes to get the same number of callbacks. And so when you build AI on top of data that has that bias embedded in it, you can encode and scale that data. So a focus on responsible AI development is really vital, and blind enthusiasm without the awareness of the power of this technology can lead to more barriers and increasing economic inequality. So I think it's really important to hold the enthusiasm and the concern at the same time.
Yeah, very good. And yeah, completely agree. It's super important to address bias and do this well. You talked about helping employers with AI. Is there anything where you're using AI to help job seekers as well?
Yes, AI has been at the foundation of Indeed for more than 15 years. Every aspect of how we help 350 million job seekers and 30 million jobs find connect the right needles in those very large haystacks is through AI. We match job seekers to jobs. We estimate salaries for jobs. That one of the most important things for a job seeker is to know what a salary for a job is, but a very small number of employers actually list the salary. So we have hundreds of millions of salary data points that allow us to build very accurate estimates to help a job seeker understand what those salaries might look like. We are obviously doing this work to help generate better job descriptions for them, but we have over the last few years made a big investment in helping job seekers to find the right jobs without even having to search. So search is powered by AI, but once a job seeker comes to Indeed and interacts with us, really within just a few minutes, we can do a very good job of identifying jobs that they might not even be thinking of and recommend them to them directly. So more than 50% of all of the paid connections on Indeed today come from recommendations, and that's really just over the last 4 to 5 years. And those recommendations, when we show a job seeker, they come to their homepage or we push a recommendation to them, those jobs are 55% more likely to interest the job seeker enough to apply to the job than just the ones that they are searching for. So that has a significant impact on being able to help them find the things that they're not even looking for in a much faster time, and make the time to actually get hired quicker than it would be.
Very good. And what's in the pipeline? What's coming up in terms of AI within Indeed that might affect how people find jobs or how employers hire?
Yeah, there's a number of things that we're really excited about right now. The couple of big things that we're doing right now. One is we are starting to do a whole lot more with generative AI. So I talked about the job description generator. We also have a new tool that we're testing now for job seekers, either in search or in a recommendation. They can actually choose to get AI insights about the fit for that job. So if we have their resume and we have the job description, they can just click a button and we will show them the highlights of why is this job a good fit or why might it not be a good fit? What are the strengths and what are the potential gaps? If there are gaps, it might be, well, this is not something that matches my requirements, so I can save my time, or it might be that my resume is missing a set of skills and we can help them update that. From an employer perspective, we're really excited about a new feature called smart sourcing, where historically there's two separate processes in hiring. You post a job and job seekers apply, or an employer will then go to a tool like Indeed Resume and manually search and contact candidates. We are bringing the same AI matching to sourcing, where an employer can now, instead of having to type in keywords, they can just select one of their jobs and we will show a matched set of candidates. We have a smart messaging feature that we're testing right now, where we can use generative AI for, once they find a candidate, to automatically generate a personalized message that explains why this job is a good fit. Also highlight those gaps, and if there are gaps, it can even automatically ask and say, well, this job requires a CNA certification. I don't see that. Do you have that certification? So it enables employers to be able to very quickly see the best candidates, and contact them without a huge effort. And here's the most interesting piece. In the testing of this technology, what we're doing is really combining the power of AI with the power of human judgment. So instead of just automatically making these connections, we're giving the employer, here's 40 candidates that we think are good. The employer then uses their human judgment to select the best ones and send these messages. I said before, those recommendations to job seekers are 50% more likely to lead to an apply. This human plus AI matching is 1,700% more likely to lead to apply. So it's a really amazing illustration of this power of the human element of hiring is incredibly important, and how do we use AI and technology to remove the barriers to that human connection. And that's something that we think is really essential and can lead to much better outcomes for job seekers and employers, but also simpler and faster and more human.
Super exciting. Yeah, that is sounds fantastic and exciting. You touched on some of the downsides, you touched on bias. How do you make sure you use AI responsibly?
Yeah, so that is incredibly important. I think the most important piece is starting with the recognition that we have a problem that needs to be addressed. And there's a ton of data. There was a really amazing recent study that shows how generative AI systems, if left unchecked, can amplify bias. And these researchers asked generative AI image generators to generate images of workers in different fields. And then they analyzed the skin tones and the perceived gender of the images that came back. And so, not surprisingly, higher paying jobs were dominated by lighter skinned images. Lower paying jobs were dominated by darker skinned images. But while that exists in the real world, the bias was amplified dramatically. So, for example, in the images of fast food workers, 70% of the images generated were people with darker skin, but 70% of fast food workers in the US are white. Um, for example, only 7% of the images of doctors were of women, but 39% of doctors in the real world are women. So recognizing that the bias that goes into these systems can lead to this amplification is a really important piece. So we have at Indeed established a responsible AI team, which is dedicated to building and ensuring fairness for job seekers and employers by measuring and mitigating the unfair bias. You have to actually recognize it's there, you have to measure it, and then you have to work to do it. We have this team is a very broadly multidiscipline team. We have astrophysicists and sociologists along with computer scientists, and they build tools. They work within Indeed and within our clients to do education and outreach. And part of the trick is we view this as what is known in the field as a socio-technical issue. It is both technology and the social elements around it. And it's impossible to solve the problem without recognizing this broader field. And so long term, we think the industry needs to evolve how we approach these systems. I've advocated for a long time that people studying computer science and data science should also study ethics and philosophy and history and read literature, and understand the real world human impact of the work that they do. Right now, everyone has run out to see Oppenheimer. I think it's very similar. I think that the people who have the power of building these systems need to be aware of the human impact. I think I've advocated before, there should be a code of ethics for AI workers, very much like the Hippocratic oath that we have in medicine. And then critically, I think we need to have a real dedication and focus on representation within technology. And so the people who are most likely to be impacted by these problems, women and people of color, are dramatically underrepresented in technology. Computer science PhDs, fewer than 20% are women, and fewer than 6% are Black or Latinx in the US. And so a real focus on improving representation among those workers. All of those things together, I think, are going to be really important for our future. And this is what Indeed is focused on and dedicated to.
Very good to hear. So what about the future are you most concerned about, and what about the future are you most excited about?
Well, I think we covered it. I mean, I am, with all of these concerns, I'm incredibly excited about the power of AI. I think that we have seen in our lifetime uh, more innovation than clearly has happened. I mean, not even in our lifetime. In the last 10 years, we've seen more innovation than in the 1,000 years before it. And I think that there are significant problems like societal inequity, which I believe, if applied correctly, we can really use this technology to help address unbelievable problems in medicine and in so many different fields that this technology can improve. My concern is that right now, the narrative that I hear in the news is just the unbridled enthusiasm without the awareness that we have to, and I'm the last person to say we should stop doing this work, but I do believe that we should be careful enough. I think that we can actually move faster if we slow down and ensure that we are bringing the right voices into the research and the engineering and the development of these systems, and ensuring that AI systems can benefit the most people on the planet as opposed to just being there to benefit the those that already have the most power and the most wealth, and becoming a tool to create more inequality and concentrate wealth. I'm excited about the possibility of it being something that's a tool to help all people.
Wonderful point to end on. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time today. That was really fascinating. Anyone who ever wants to re-listen to this and many other fascinating conversations, simply head to my podcast or my YouTube channel. Thank you, Chris.
Bernard, thank you so much for having me.